The title of my presentation today is The Red Brick Store Daybooks, Just Financial Transactions. Financial records are frequently marginalized or noticeably absent in Latter-day Saint historical narratives. If one were to conduct a search for books or articles on financial and economic aspects of early church history, the list would be relatively short. A quick scan of primary sources cited in church history articles would likewise reveal a minute representation or complete omission of financial records. This approach sends the message that financial records are only relevant in financial contexts and irrelevant in non-financial contexts, a stockpile of computational data with no relationship to the lived experience of Latter-day Saints. Today, I want to dispel this myth by doing some outside-the-box thinking using Joseph Smith Store Daybooks as a test case. Before I begin my remarks, I want to provide some basic instruction on daybooks and ledgers, how they function, and describe the economic culture operating in Nauvoo that is evident in the daybooks. Then, I'll examine the familial and financial networks evident in the daily financial transactions recorded there. Next, I'll look at the store accounts for some of Joseph Smith's plural wives, and look at how the daybooks provide further context for a document that is part of the Joseph Smith guardianship of the Lawrence children. Slides from my presentation will highlight segments of the daybooks that illustrate the familial and transactional networks at Nauvoo, and we'll touch briefly on how financial records inform non-financial contexts. A daybook is a financial record of a business's daily transactions, frequently in the order in which they occurred. When items are purchased and money is owed, a negative balance is identified in a daybook by the name of the customer, followed by DR for debit. Customers sometimes sold items to a business or submitted payments on their accounts. These transactions are represented as a positive balance in the daybook, again by the name of the customer, followed by CR for credit. There are two extant daybooks for Joseph Smith's store. Daybook A spans January through July 1842 and is housed at the Church History Library in Salt Lake City. Daybook B spans June 1842 through November 1843 and is in the custody of the Iowa Masonic Library in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Business transactions recorded in a daybook were usually copied into a ledger. Unlike a daybook, which had entries organized chronologically, ledger accounts were organized by the name of the purchaser and separated into debit and credit columns. This organization made the identification of a positive or negative balance on an account readily apparent. The ledger for Joseph Smith's store is not extant. However, I'm pleased to say that the Joseph Smith Papers Project will reconstruct the ledger by mining the data from the daybooks and posting a transcript of it on our website in the next few years. The economy in early 19th century America was cash poor, meaning there was not enough legal tender in circulation to meet business needs. Paper notes from private banks were frequently used but scarce, and the viability of notes was dependent on the reputation of the bank issuing them. As a result, the economy relied on the extension of credit, and promissory notes and pay orders became a more prevalent way of doing business. Debit and credit transactions at Joseph's store relied heavily upon pay orders, which were written, and less formal, and less frequently upon verbal orders. It appears that verbal orders could be given by the account holder or perhaps a hired boy or girl who brought specific purchase instructions from the account holder. Account holders also drew cash against their accounts for personal debts or unspecified reasons, a common practice of businesses at this time in America that effectively thrust the businesses into a quasi-banking lending role. A study of the Joseph Smith Store daybooks reveals a familial and business network among the predominant scribes of the daybooks. These scribes were Newell K. Whitney, James Henry Rollins, Joseph C. Kingsbury, and Lorenzo Wasson. Whitney, the most business savvy of the bunch, was a merchant for nearly 3 decades before lending his financial and business acumen to Joseph Smith's store. Around 1820, Whitney became a clerk for Sidney Gilbert and later partnered with Gilbert to create Newell K. Whitney & Co. in Kirtland, Ohio in 1827. James Henry Rollins was a nephew of Sidney Gilbert and clerked at Newell K. Whitney & Co. as soon as he was old enough to be employed. Joseph Kingsbury was married to Caroline Whitney, the daughter of Newell K. Whitney, and Lorenzo Wasson was the nephew of Joseph Smith. The familial connectivity of this group became even closer when Joseph Smith was sealed to Newell K. Whitney's daughter, Sarah Ann, in July 1842. Kingsbury, whose wife Caroline died in 1842, married Sarah Ann Whitney civilly in April 1843. Connectivity is also evident in transactional networks where children were purchasing items on the accounts of their fathers and employers, and mothers were utilizing the accounts of sons. The temporal needs of Lucy Mack Smith were frequently met by her son Joseph's personal account, and Joseph's sister, Catherine Smith Salisbury, received goods on Joseph's account for several months. Children repeatedly purchased household staples and goods on the account of an employer or possibly a parent, with the purchaser simply being described as boy, girl, daughter, or son. Additionally, transactions and cash withdrawals in the daybooks attest to social systems and structures where store account holders met the needs of the impoverished, the nameless, and the widows of Nauvoo. Newell K. Whitney purchased a bushel of beans from a stranger in late January 1842 and did not include the amount of the purchase, possibly because the seller did not have a store account to be credited. The day the Nauvoo Female Relief Society was organized, Arthur Milliken extended cash to a quote-unquote poor man. Ephraim Potter donated 50 cents to a poor man. Joseph Smith purchased goods for a Mrs. Thompson, possibly the widow of Robert B. Thompson, in July 1842. And Emma Smith, on Joseph's account, purchased goods for a woman. These types of entries are evidence of a communal network where the poorest of the poor are aided and attended to in their time of need. The transactions are an expression of lived religion in Nauvoo, where citizens succored the weak, lifted up the hands that hung down, and strengthened the feeble knees. A notable, albeit confusing aspect of the daybooks are purchases from women who would become Joseph Smith's plural wives. Some of these women are represented in the daybooks for a time, then suddenly absent, while the nature of transactions evolve for others. Desdemona Fulmer, who was sealed to Joseph Smith in July 1843, started her store account in February 1842, but the account abruptly terminated in July the same year. Purchases for a Miss Partridge and Eliza Partridge on Joseph Smith's account transpired in April and July 1842, but the young women are not mentioned again in the daybooks. Purchases by Maria and Sarah Lawrence in the daybooks normally occur within the context of Joseph Smith's guardianship of the children of Edward Lawrence. Accounts of the Lawrence children appear to be winding down by September 1843, likely in preparation for the planned transfer of guardianship to John Taylor in January 1844. Daybook entries for Maria and Sarah that were formerly for combs, gloves, and fabric for clothing ceased. Requests for cash replaced them. And accounts for all the Lawrence children that were active at David Yearsley's store were transferred to the Red Brick store for balancing. My efforts to date on the accounts of Joseph's plural wives have just scratched the surface, and I'm confident I missed something in perusing 600 total manuscript pages of the daybooks. Which women have store accounts? Which do not? Are any of the transactions represented in the daybooks, do any of the transactions for these women that are in the daybooks segue with their experiences that are detailed in other historical records? There is really so much untapped potential research on these women. Store daybook entries also provide some clarification of and context for the guardianship accounts of the children of Edward Lawrence. The daybooks are the genesis of information in one of the two accounts of guardianship Joseph Smith submitted to the Adams County, Illinois Probate Court. In late 1839, church member Edward Lawrence died with his will not identifying a guardian for his children. Illinois law allowed children 14 years and older to select a guardian for themselves and their younger siblings when the deceased had failed to do so. For unspecified reasons, Maria and Sarah Lawrence, ages 17 and 14, selected Joseph Smith as their guardian in June 1841. As guardian, Joseph would have retained accounts of expenditures made on behalf of the children for their general care and upkeep, seen here. These accounts would later be submitted to the court for payment from the assets of Edward Lawrence's estate. Unfortunately, extant financial records are inadequate to identify what clothing Joseph Smith furnished for the Lawrence children between June 1841 and June 1842. This is the segment that is in this blue square, the blue rectangle. Daybook A contains purchases for the Lawrence children beginning in January 1842, effectively leaving 6 months of purchases that precede the opening of Joseph Smith's store that are unaccounted for. The daybooks do offer context for the expenditures of the children between 1842 and 1843. In 1843, store daybook B, the image on the right, seen here, credited Margaret Lawrence Butterfield $49 for 1 year's interest on her father's estate. Payments for Maria and Sarah in the count are challenging. There's nothing from the daybooks that exactly matches the amounts identified here. Nelson Lawrence received a pair of shoes and a knife totaling $1.82, and a portion of purchases for Henry included shoes. The outstanding $2.50 here is comparable to school fees that are being paid annually for the children that are absent in the time frame of this account. But mining this data from the store accounts clarifies that the amount paid to the children in the guardianship account wasn't a cash payout per se, but in most instances it was a purchase of goods for their general care. I also wanted to share something that I stumbled upon at the last minute. During a hiatus of the Nauvoo Relief Society in the winter of 1842-1843, Emma Smith began working as a clerk in the store. Her entries in Daybook B begin in late October 1842 and continue intermittently until early October 1843. While her involvement in Joseph Smith's store makes logical sense, Daybook B is the contemporaneous proof of it. My hope is that her contribution at the Redrick store will make its way into histories that are written about her. This is just a sampling of the possible ways to approach financial records for non-financial purposes. When the Redrick store daybooks are carefully scrutinized, familial and financial networks are more apparent, communal networks are more apparent, texts are clarified, and details that are either vague or absent from other historical sources rise to the surface. Financial records can and should be used outside of financial contexts, and I encourage those attending this conference to do so. Thank you.